G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day, and I know that I missed yesterday's update, but I was out filming all day. I had a massive day, but I think I'll bring you guys some stuff that you will really like, and talking about the asymmetrical hybrid campaign that is going on across the border here and how this affects many nations, including ones of which we're going to talk about today. So of course this is a Ukraine update by the title. Now, we need to talk about air defense, not only what Ukraine is seeking, but also the People's Deputy of Ukraine has come out and said some critical things about Ukraine's air defenses, and we need to go over that and exactly what the issues are and what is happening and what she has said. Now, we need to talk about the NATO summit, what Ukraine is seeking, what may be the outcome of this, and of course then we'll look at then the maps. So look, we're going to start with the maps. Now, we have 2 days of maps to go over, but we actually don't have that much. Now, I'm going to have 2 tabs open here. This one is going to be the 10th. The next one is going to be the 11th. So just keep an eye on that as we bounce between, just because my internet is very slow. Now, of course, here's Ukraine, the center, the capital of Kyiv. The red areas are occupied since 22. The purple since 2014, and the checked red are areas that have changed within the last 24 hours. The blue is Russian territory that's been made, Ukrainian territory that's been made within the last 2 weeks. Now, where we're going to come on first on this map is we're just going to work down what changes have been shown on this map and compare them to other maps. So we'll come up in the northeastern corner, this Kupiansk front here. Of course, this is a center sort of hub here for Ukraine, and where Russia is trying to have some foothold in here, but hasn't been having much success for a while. Though we have seen some change, and what we are seeing today is just to the east of Thankyou that Russia has then made some ground. Sorry, not today, but then yesterday. Now, this was then confirmed by Siversk map in pretty much the same-ish area, although showing maybe a bit less, but he's also showing that in this sort of 6 roads up here that Russia is a fair bit more, well, not a fair bit, but a little bit more south up to then this intersection in here. This is an incredibly hot area, somewhere that's very important, and of course there's been a lot of pushing in and around this front for then a long time. So we're just going to move down the map until we see where things are starting to move on this. Now, in the video before this one, we spoke about how Russia may have tunneled under into New York, and this is why that front has opened. And on the 10th map, we then see that this shows pretty much exactly what we're reporting on the day from other maps, that there has been a break-in into these outskirts of New York here on the sort of southwestern side. So this does show on the 10th what we reported on that day, but we're working off maps typically we then do not use. Now, let's go across to then the 11th map, so the next day, and have a look. And what Russia is doing here has expanded control out to the west. Now, what we have spoken about is how Russia's doing these, like, I'm going to call it the sausage maneuver. It's definitely the correct term. But this push up, expand out, push up, expand out. This is exactly what we saw in somewhere like Osheretny very recently. And this is what Russia's now working on is, yeah, they've got that foothold, you know, in that straight sausage. Now we need to then create some girth on it so you then can't be cut off as easily, and that is exactly what then we are seeing here. And of course, this is putting this whole area through to Toretsky, this front, in trouble as well. So this is then what we are seeing. I just had a network issues thing. Let's hope this then records. Now, let's then show what Siversk is talking about in this then area. So let's do one more zoom in. So look, to the northern push, he's not showing that much different. Just these blocks in here, but realistically not too much different. Now, on the western side, he's actually showing less control. This tree line here is what Deep State is showing is under Russian control. But to the eastern side, he's showing a little bit more control. So just the east on the south down here, basically showing the same, but he's showing more so that this continues up something like this. So look, this is an area of which we said to keep an eye on, and we are seeing that expansion of control, of course, jeopardizing 2014 lines here that have been built up and have been sitting for a while. Now, back onto then the 10th map. And we will then look around this Avdiivka Sokil front. So we then see just a small advancement here near Yevnihivka. In Sokil, of course, Russia's trying to. This originally started as one of those sausages, and then we see the girthening happen. That would be the name of my tape. That's a lie. Anyway, let's go across to the 11th map, and then we see further expansion on this exact area. So this small push out here, and then the close up. So a sort of tiny envelopment there. Now we do have, I believe, a Syriac map in this same area then today. Here we go. From Syriac, and bang, exact same area. This is what we like to see when both maps, regardless of where the politics may sit, showing the same. Situation on Australian front, Russia took full control of the central part of Yevnihivka. Clash with Ukrainian army began, northern warehouses of Novoselivska, Persia. So Novoselivska, Persia, the outskirts in here, and this is what we have spoken about, that what we believe is Russia's moving urban centre to urban centre, and then we'll see, like we just saw down from Sokil to this reservoir, we'll see those open ground areas then fall relatively quickly. Now, on the 10th map, I don't believe there's any other changes on this one at all. No. Then we come back to the 11th map, and I believe they were the only changes we saw as well. But I want to talk about a couple more areas. So, of course, we need to talk about then Vovchansk. Now, of course, Ukraine has been making ground in here for about the last week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, pushing back the Russians and, being into the northern side of the Vovcha River here. Now, from multiple maps that I've seen, but not the pro-Ukrainian maps, but these maps are showing that Russia is now making an advancement here, and interestingly showing and saying that Russia has actually crossed to now the southern side of that Vovcha River, where we haven't yet really seen them actually be able to get a foothold. So this one came out yesterday, I believe. This is military summary. Troops have crossed the Vovcha River, and heavy clashes taking place south. So river running through here, and grey zone that Russian troops have crossed. Of course, this is this part. I don't know if this would load for me. Come on, baby. Maybe not. Anyway, that this crossing has occurred down into here. Then we have then a Syriac map update today, backing this up to a degree. Wrong one. Here we go. So, showing that this crossing out into this territory then here. So this, you can just see it, but this is where that road is. This is where this says the disconnect of the Russian troops has been for 3 weeks now, and that he's saying that the Russians have actually got a foothold out across here. True of access, last 48 hours, Russian army crossed the Vovcha River and took control of the stadium of Vovchansk. So saying that they're in then the stadium there, but look, let's wait and see what confirmations happen in here. It's very, very difficult to know within an urban centre because things can change like that. And there are areas which can be Russian controlled in the day and Ukrainian controlled at night. There's areas that happen like that, especially in and around Kharkiv. So, but interesting just to keep an eye on how this front may change in here. Now, let's come down, and we'll come down then into Stelmakhivka. Now, this map, for some reason, does not actually label Stelmakhivka, but this is Stelmakhivka in here. Now, we know there's been a lot of pushing. We saw this spire come out as well the other day, and then we have a Syriac map update. Now, he shows this significantly different. So this red dot, this is Andriivka. This is Stelmakhivka running north to south in here. Now, as you can see, that his yellow on this map shows basically from Andriivka following down to the very outskirts here and back in at where then this spire has come out. So he's showing that Russia controlled a lot of then the green zone in here. He's showing there was some more easterly push here too. Russian army entered the locality of Stelmakhivka, so saying that then they've made then a break-in. And we saw this come out, so we know that they're close. But remember, we want confirmation across multiple, but what he is saying is this map is more looking something like this. So look, as always, grain of salt until we have multiple sources confirming things, and it's going to be difficult to know regardless because we know the informational wars and games that are at play. Now let's come down to Krasnohorivka, where we have seen it was stalled for a long time. Then we have seen both maps confirming that Russia is making some advancements in here. If Krasnohorivka comes then under Russian control, you're then going to have a problem with all this open ground here, with Nevelsky sitting this open ground between, of course, this, or call this still the Avdiivka front near Netalyove, and you've got then another, not envelopment, but you've got urban centres coming under control through here, through Kharkivka, as well as then a lot of open ground, that movement between centres of mass. Now let's have a look in here. Now what Siversk is showing, zoom back in, is that then this centre just in here has then come under Russian control, full control of the micro-district of Krasnohorivka, the hospital and agriculture school. We're advancing near these then streets. So further movement in here, but not being shown on this map, although shown as grey zone. And we did see then this close up over the past then week or so. So interesting to look at, and that is then our maps for today. Now we know that the NATO summit is on. Now a lot of people are very critical of what is happening. A lot of pro-Ukraine accounts are saying that America's taking credit for a lot that is occurring, and there's a bit of like patting on the back, but not much actual action and new things then occurring. Now, the primary topic that Ukraine is trying to push, one, trying to get more funding, but secondly, mostly trying to get the ability to strike deeper within Russia with Western weapons. That is the primary bit that Ukraine is trying to get, as well as air defense. And of course, after we saw those attacks then, 3 days ago, has been leaning on that to then push. This is why then we need more air defense. And Jens Stoltenberg has then said this: as Ukraine continues its vital reforms, we'll continue to support them on the irreversible path to NATO membership. The work we're doing together now ensure that when the time is right, Ukraine can join without delay. It's not a question of if, but when. In a dangerous world, friends and partners are more important than ever. The thing with this is Ukraine needs a lot of reforms to join NATO. This isn't a simple in. There's a lot of reforms. Even some of the most pro-Ukrainian politicians have said it could take a decade to actually create these reforms. The biggest part that is going to have to happen, though, is the war needs to end, and there needs to not be then an active border dispute with Russia. Now, people may, you can have a border dispute when a country joins NATO. Maybe if that country is, willy land and it's not powerful. But when it's Russia, the whole purpose of why NATO was created, then they're not going to come in. Russia is still going to exist after this war, like it or not. And then NATO will still exist, like it or not. And they're still going to be, of course, headed then at each other. So with an active dispute on a border, particularly if it is Russia, that has to be completely settled before there would be any realistic possibility of getting into NATO. And we do not know how this war ends, and we do not know diplomatically what deals are going to be made. We know Russia wants a neutral Ukraine. So I don't know how this is going to look, but for what Ukraine want, it's going to have to then continue through to its 1991 borders militarily. And that's where doubt gets thrown in of, is this reasonable? Is this possible? And at what cost would be incurred to Ukraine if that was to happen? Could it be Pyrrhic, being is the juice not worth the squeeze, that if you lose so many people doing that and then you have an internal collapse, that is concerns that people are realistically then looking at. But also at this, we did see that Norway wants to give Ukraine then another six F-16s. Now, we're expecting to see these F-16s any day now. I've been saying that for months. Now, we know there's probably some air defense issues. There's probably, we know there has been some training issues as well, and the lengthening of this and the amount that can come in. But I do believe too many people are hanging their hat on one specific item, and that being an F-16 and in limited quantities. Similarly to the Charlies, the Leopards, the Abrams, of these game changers, things that will completely switch the war. I don't believe that these will have the effect that many are thinking, and it could actually have a massive morale degrade if they don't perform to that incredible standard that people are expecting, to the F-22 standard that people are expecting on pilots that have trained for 12, 18 months maximum, not 6, 7, 10 years of training and experience and upskilling as pilots may have in other nations. Now, we need to talk about air defense, but I'll show you a cool video to keep you then interested. This is apparently over the Caspian Sea. These fisher them, thanks Sam Smith, these fishermen out in the water see these flying. Now, what people are pointing out is how low these are, potentially to then go under radar. So you see the first one come through. So very, very fast, very, very low, potentially under radar. Russian Kaliber cruise missile, unsure where those particularly are going. But we need to talk about air defense. Now, this came out then yesterday around what Ukrainian air defense did then intercept. So it intercepted none of Iskander-M, none of the Kh-59s, and 14 of 30 Shahed drones. That was on an attack then yesterday. Now, the People's Deputy of Ukraine has gone onto Facebook and has posted this. Now, from what I can see, the account is real. It's got 50, 60,000 followers. It seems all legit to me about the problems in air defense. We're going to go through this. We're going to talk about it a little bit. In July 2024, a terrible tragedy occurred. Another terrorist attack by Russia. Russian missiles targeted Children's Hospital. A number of buildings. People killed were injured, damaged infrastructure and equipment. The world has seen more undeniable evidence that these were Russian winged missiles. Pointing out that the evidence was filmed, although it was demanded from everyone that it not be filmed. But not only are we used to the typical reports from military spokesmen and the words of other officials based on the information of the command that our cities are being hit by interruptions rather than loaded missiles that destroy homes, factories and military units, as if the Russians do not have satellites and drones flying freely over the territory of Ukraine to check and correct the hits. And this is something we talk about. Filming something may give BDA, but don't think that Russia and Chinese satellites aren't overhead exactly looking at that, as well as drones and or people then on the ground as well. Check and correct the hits. The word ulamaki instead of rockets allegedly reassure the population to keep faith in the armed forces longer. Unfortunately, while citizens, according to polls, still have enormous resilience, their perception of mobilisation shows the true trust of the majority in the huge red tape military system. Unfortunately, the Russians know it, and I'm sure that they take part in the sabotaging. There is no video recording of flyby and hits systematically, and the population is told that it cannot be done. So you can't film it, therefore, we can't get confirmation of what or was not hit. Statistics of shot down and not shot down missiles and drones are falsified. As I wrote before, for example, if 5 drones are flying, not shooting down 5, but they'll write that 10 drones flew and 5 were shot down. So saying that if 5 drones flew and they couldn't shoot down any of them, they will say that 10 drones flew, then they hit 5. So it makes it still look like that at least 50% were successfully engaged. It reduces the possibility of fixing Russian crimes, puts us in a bad light to partners who have their own independent statistics. And partners are looking at it too and going, well, this isn't what we are getting on the information. Gives the enemy additional reasons for manipulation. I will also note that playing with this gives Russians a reason to lie that the destruction of Ukrainian houses is a consequence of the work of Ukrainian PPO. PPO is like air defense units. Prioritizing goals is chaotic. Not all mobile groups' calculations are on duty or given positions. About corruption and how their people can number and not be wrote before. For example, the executor of the National University here, who has a chain of corruption scandals and which is barely evicted from the university, hides from the investigation in the air defence unit. At time set up by Zaluzny, who still serves, of course, in Ambassador UK. The arrangement of some groups is uneven, and the coordination interaction with calculations and that use the anti-air defence is usually appalling. At the same time, missiles for air defence are supplied from partners in such dosage that are so few. For example, Patriots are forced to transfer into manual mode for their economy, which puts an organisational problems of awareness, interaction and decision making, which in turn, in extreme situations, leads to human error when it is used. They shoot down a Shahed, not a rocket. The Russian rocket continues to destroy an important critical infrastructure facility worth billions. So again, a Shahed, actually a drone, is not worth getting hit by then a Patriot missile. It needs to be hit by something else. But the problems here, that's what's saying it can then happen. At the same time, improvement of the Russians has come to the point that they fly reconnaissance drones, adjust additional flights, check by satellites and repeat as needed. We've exactly seen this with Russian drones filming impacts of missiles. At the same time, elementary mobile groups and drone calculations at key objects often have no infrastructure. The key objects often have no anti-air defence at all, and Russians are well aware of it. Since our anti-air defence still has problems and adhering to the elementary rules of displacement and masking, the Russians impress him and avoid beating. The RLS do not always go on duty and have terrible problems with coordinating actions, which gives Russians the chance to plan their route efficiently as possible. Not only, I remember instances when even in a combat zone, people lied about the exit of RLS and their work, which in turn led to tragedy. So thinking it's there and then it's not. Now, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine emphasises that it has taken individual units to restore instead of introducing internal rotations. Actually, in particular, they took people from mobile groups who already know the area, removed people from protection of critical infrastructure objects who knew the nuances of these objects, which are already written about, and set them off. remove people from the protection of these infrastructure objects who knew the nuances of these objects. So moving people around, then there's problems when people go into captivity, like they say, and exactly how to operate around that system. Contracts for anti-air defence repair begun to be made this year only in June. So a long way in for then contracts of repair. The situation of repairs is terrible. Some examples of Western equipment are already faulty. In general, there is no regulatory work on foreign machinery. There is no account for motor hours, which prevents the planning of work. Most contracts on road repairs have not been signed. There are no forms on the equipment. The warehouses of parts has not been determined. The only repair documentation has not been produced. The equipment is distributed amongst companies for repair. As a result, there are actually no two identical cars. Repair is mainly carried out by cannibalizing machines, which reduces their number and accordingly density of the anti-air defense. Such a repair car stops working for 1 or 2 months. Add here corruption risks and trying to involve your firms and gasket firms. Dynamics are increasing, and by the end of the year, we may lose the absolute majority of anti-aircraft technology. As still on the 3rd year of full-scale war, there is critically unsystemic work to repair and maintenance both inside and with partners. And we saw this then yesterday. This was going to be in the video, that more Patriot batteries coming from the US, Germany, Romania, as well as additional then air defense systems such as NASAMS, Hawks, RST, SLM, SLS, and Gepards. What people are asking though is, are these new ones or are these replacements for ones that have been damaged, destroyed, or are mechanically broken? So that's something to put out too, that you can't just say, well, okay, 5 new ones are coming, so we can just plus 5 on, because we don't know what has or has not been hit, because we have no idea how successful the rocket strikes actually are, what military targets these then are or are not hitting. But Russia would, by this, with satellites and stuff overhead. And to be honest, partners look wide open eyes. For example, last year in 2023, Great Britain did not distribute or finance a £400 million repairs because, in particular, the Ministry of Defence and the Armed Forces General Staff could not explain how they plan to spend these funds and adapt the need. So £400 million to then repair air defence, couldn't explain exactly how this was going to be done, therefore then it was not financed. The risks were discussed in particular by partners in 2022, but for example, the security of the PPO was controlled by Colonel Grevenich, who has criminal proceedings regarding cooperation with the Russians during the occupation of Crimea. And what we're talking about is years in, and there's still major problems, and the maintenance and repairs are then not still in place. And this is from the People's Deputy here, in a politician in Ukraine. After all this, the ex-head of the ZSU, Zheluzny, became ambassador to Great Britain. I remember the time Gustav loved to give interviews at the Kiev plant. Flight the next day, several dozens dead. Zhytomyr, flight destruction in the workshop. Lviv, flight destruction, and again killed. So giving interviews, Russians geolocated it and hit them with drones and or missiles. Let's go back to July 8, 2024, which demonstrated progress for Russians, but not for us. Winged rockets, X-101, is difficult means for anti-air defense target, but the RLS still detected. Questions are asked, so the radar still detected. Were these missiles detected on time, or were they detected at all? Were they escorted in by something? Is there a lower limit on the solid radiolocation units, Air Force units, radar stuff? At what height were the missiles used by the opponent? Were you visually observing the missiles coming towards you if they were detected? How is the information about the radiolocation and visual surveillance transmitted? Was it transmitted at all? So is there coordination between multiple groups as these are flying a long way across to come into Ukraine? Has coordinated system been built, anti-aircraft defence in particular, around Kyiv? Why does the interception of missiles occur exactly on the outskirts of the city? So why is the interception over or on the outskirts of Kyiv and not then further out in layered air defence if they're being detected a long way coming in? We need to think, change, break down factions, ignorance and corruption. Learn to preserve resources and plan elementary to control, cooperate with partners every day and not to freeze, like give weapons and don't touch. We'll sort it out ourselves. So working with these partners in coordination, not just we'll do it all ourselves. I understand this and it hurts, and ends, I think, on a good line here. To be indifferent and to remain silent is criminal. So if you're not calling this out, nothing is ever going to get fixed from politicians, and this is something we see a lot. It's just everything's fine, and then it's led to the morale issues we're seeing when Russia is making ground, Russia is bombing cities, Russia is having a lot more success in every faction currently in the war. Things aren't fine, but it's been said that it's all fine hand shandies around and propagandists on YouTube not willing to call things out and saying that it is not calling this out and not being realistic is criminal, because then things don't get fixed. Anyway, one big thing that people talk about coming out of this NATO piece is Poland intercepting Russian missiles. Now, this is still not going to be that far. Even if something's right on the border, we're talking Lviv, these areas, 160 k's into Ukraine, and I believe these are only ones that threaten Polish airspace. So this isn't going to be some massive game changer. The centres of power, Kyiv and other areas, are still going to be well outside then of this range. Legends. Struggled to get through the talking on this one today for some reason. Look after yourself, have a great day, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.